Thank you. Actually, I don't want to speak because I just spoke at the council. I think it's public, so you followed it. You saw the points I raised. This may be actually my last briefing to the council, in particular in this format. And so I insisted on the several crises, some opportunities for solution, but above all also the very, very difficult financial situation that UNHCR, like the rest of the aid system, find itself in, and a strong appeal to address that, since this is the Security Council, not just from the financial point of view, but also from the point of view of security and stability. A weak humanitarian response, a weaker humanitarian response will not help with stability and security, which is their mandate. So that was my message. Thank you.
We'll start with a few questions by Gabriel from AJE.
Hi, Gabriel Zondo, Al Jazeera English. Thank you very much for your briefing. I want to just ask you a follow-up on your remarks at the end about funding. The UNHCR budgets is about $10 billion, about $2 billion of which came from the United States historically. It looks like there's going to be close to nothing this year. It's only a couple $100 million so far that they've committed to. Do you foresee being able to make up this gap, or are you resigned to the fact that the cuts are happening, they are coming, and there's going to be a total realignment on the way you have to operate in terms of budgeting in the future? Thank you.
I'm never resigned to anything, but of course it will be very tough. The budget has been 10, 11 billion a year. Already before this crisis, as you know, the reality is that the contributions were about 50% of that. But we have been able, with approximately $5 billion a year for the past 4 or 5 years, to do our work. We could have done much better with more, but we were able to do the essential with those resources. Now this year, because of, for UNHCR, the percentage of US funding was very high, about 40%, the $2 billion a year. That is still being negotiated. We have received a little more than 350 million from the US for 2025. And we are discussing with the administration the remainder of the funds, about 700 million, so the double, that were frozen at the beginning of this administration. And I'm confident that more of those frozen funds will be conveyed, it will be allowed to be spent by UNHCR. So that discussion continues. And then, of course, we will have to wait till the so-called 180-day review of foreign assistance that is being conducted by the State Department and the administration to see what will happen next. So there's a lot of uncertainty on the part of our largest donor, but dialogue going on. But I think it's important to remember that other donors also are reducing funding. Several donors in Europe, which is the other big source of funding for us, about $1 billion in total in the past few years, are reducing. And they are reducing for a variety of reasons, but mostly because they have increased expenditure in defense, for example, or they are holding back funds to address possible economic consequences of trade tensions and so forth. So it's an extreme, the difficulty of this crisis is the uncertainty, because we would like not to reduce, but as time goes by, that imperative to reduce is there. And I have to tell you, because the financial rules of my organization do not allow me to spend more than the money that I have or is firmly pledged. So we have now started cutting, unfortunately. I fear, and I said this to the council in my final remarks, that we may be cutting up to 1/3 of the capacity of our organization. This is pretty dramatic. It will mean, I don't have yet, because we're still working on that, I cannot tell you the number of positions, but we will have less staff capacity. We will have less offices because we will have to close in many countries and maybe operate from one country covering a number of other countries. This is not good because UNHCR's presence is important for protection reasons, for discussing with governments, for contributing to legislative debates, and of course for humanitarian operations. So I'm very worried. And one last point on this, and thank you for asking me this question, I can elaborate. I'm very worried because this is not just UNHCR. It's the whole system. So even our partners that are so important for us, the World Food Program, IOM, UNICEF, they are all being, many NGOs, the Red Cross movement, we're all under pressure, and we cannot say, okay, as we did in the past, we have to retrench here, please help us in this particular area, and this is difficult because we're all retrenching. I have to say that, to conclude, sorry to speak a lot, but the initiative led by the Emergency Relief Coordinator, by Tom Fletcher, under the umbrella of the Interagency Standing Committee. This is really the humanitarian system. And of course, the initiative led by the Secretary General, UN80, are important fora within which we'll try to maximize the synergies and try to address this crisis. It's going to be difficult. Meanwhile, we cannot wait for this initiative to give result because otherwise we would overspend, so we have to reduce. Like I said, I don't want to hear any more people telling me do more with less. This is absurd. You will do less with less. We will try to do it in the best possible way, the most rational way, maximizing efficiencies, becoming as if even more efficient, but it's going to be it's going to have an impact on millions of people that will receive less food, less cash, less water, and that will benefit less from a protecting presence as UNHCR has in many places. Sorry, I gave you a very long reply.
Just a quick follow-up. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. On that note, has any other countries signalled that they might try and fill the gap? Are you looking to any particular countries who you think could step up and help with some more money?
If you take the uncertainty surrounding US funding and the cuts announced by a number of other donors, I think it will be very difficult to make up for either uncertainty or decline. I can tell you, no problem, also some mentioned here, that a number of countries, for example, Canada, has decided to increase from last year its contribution by a certain percentage. Korea, you heard them speak at the council. Korea has been an exceptionally growing donor in the last few years, and they just confirmed that they will continue in this trend. Denmark, they also spoke likewise, and insisting also that their funding is flexible. And a few other countries, especially the Nordics, Sweden, Norway, have remained, at least they will remain stable. But even if you add up all these additional or same levels of funding, it will be difficult to compensate some of the decline that we might, I say might because we don't know, but we might face going forward.
TRT World, you mentioned about a 30% cut in your budget before. I want to get a little clarity on that. If you're thinking of a 30% cut, how does that compare to how much more you're being asked to do this year than last year in terms of your job?
Well, I think these are always difficult calculations, but if you take, and this was mentioned also by, in fact, the French presidency, 10 years ago there were 60 million refugees and displaced. Today there are 120. It has doubled, but the resources that we received have not doubled. And if this figure continues to grow, like it has unfortunately grown in the last few years, think of Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, and then other crises. Each crisis adds needs, but the overall volume doesn't increase at best, and now decreases. So certainly there are two opposing trends there that are extremely worrying. And I have to say something, sorry, to use your question to add, because I said it and I want to say it again. From the refugee point of view, from the point of view of my organization, doing less forced to be done less in places like Chad, for example, where I was just 2 weeks ago, a few weeks ago, means that people that are arriving from Sudan and continue to arrive, I can assure you, I saw them streaming in, they will get less immediate assistance. They will wait for a bit to see if this assistance comes. If it doesn't, they will move on. So European countries that are always so worried about the movement of people to their shores through the Mediterranean, they should look at it also from this perspective. If you don't assist people next to the conflict, where most of them stop because they want to go back eventually, these people will move on. So there is a correlation between this. I also have conveyed respectfully to the administration of the United States that if we cut programs in places like Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Mexico, all the routes that people take in Latin America, people will be on the move. The programs that we have done in the last few years, generously funded by the US, in Colombia, for example, through temporary protection regime, have been very stabilizing. You can say, yeah, people have continued to move, but if we hadn't had those programs, I'm sure more people would have moved. So, there is a correlation also between this, which I want to alert the international community about.
Do you disagree that the funding you receive from the U.S. is politicized?
Is?
Do you disagree that the funding that you receive from the U.S. is politicized now?
You mean the funding that we received in the past?
No, but yeah.
No, I think the funding that we have always received from the US was to help refugees. Actually, I think it was a stabilizing factor. I don't think that's a political statement, that's a reality.
What about now, though? The
Well,
proposal-
now they are reviewing this aid, so we don't know how this aid will be managed in the future, but we hope that they will take into consideration what I just said.
Yes, thank you, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York Ital Press. Do you have a message for the U.S. administration about actually refugees?
About?
Refugees, they are here in this country and they are concerned, very worried, because there's been talk, especially about refugees from Haiti, that for the temporary status, they are not going to renew it, so there could be all of a sudden thousands and thousands of refugees that will lose their status here in the United States.
You're talking about temporary protection, not refugee status. But the message is the message that we pass to all countries, that people that seek asylum, that come from countries at war or in conflict, like Haiti, should not be returned to those countries or to places from which they could be deported to those countries. So that's the message that we always pass. Thank you.
Thank you so much.